All right, looks like we have quorum. I have the honor of starting today's meeting because it's a reorganizational day. Everybody can hear us in here? Okay, great. So I call this airport commission meeting to order at 4:05 on Tuesday, July 2nd. First up is just an acknowledgement of the remote commissioners, if the three of you can just say hello.
Arnold Winooski.
Greg Shepler, Burlington.
Chip Mason, Burlington, and I think I saw Jeff Schulman, who may have dropped.
Yeah, Jeff Shulman just walked in the room.
Oh, he's here. There we go. Sorry, shoot.
Yep, it's tricky, that's multitasking. I love it.
That's why I can vote twice.
All right, so first, second item is the agenda. Is there a motion? Is there a motion to amend or adopt the agenda?
I'll move that we approve the agendas proposed.
Second.
Second by Chip. Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Hi.
Great, motion carries to adopt the agenda. Second item is the election of the chair of the Patrick Leahy Burlington International Airport Commission for our new fiscal year 2024. 2025. Is there a motion or a recommendation for chair?
I would like to nominate Tim to continue his role as chair. Done an amazing job as our leader and take the role really seriously and support the staff as needed and just feel like we're in really good hands, and my preference is that you continue to accept the nomination. Thank you.
And I'll second that. I think you do a great job. You really run the meetings well and you have a little humor, which is always good. So I would happily second that.
Is there any additional comments or are we ready for a motion? Vote, sorry. Seeing none, all in favor of Tim George as commission chair?
Hi.
Aye.
See a unanimous vote for Tim as our new and continued chair, and I will open the meeting off to you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your support. The next item on the agenda is item 2.2, election of the vice chair. And I'd be willing to entertain nominations for the vice chair position at this time.
I'll nominate Jeff Schulman. He's done a great job. He's willing to do it, which is also helpful. Most importantly, and you guys make a good team.
Is there a second for Jan?
Second.
Second, okay. Any other nominees for the vice chair? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of Jeff Schulman as our vice chair, please signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations, Jeff. I look forward to working with you in another year. Thanks. Right, we move on now to item 3, which is public forum. There's a name I don't recognize on that list. Townsend?
Yeah, it's a city employee.
Okay.
For a later item, so I don't think.
Okay, so we have no members.
Does it look like there's any public?
Okay.
Attendance?
Thank you, yeah, so if that's the case, we will close down item 3. We'll move on to item 4, which is the consent agenda. Do you hear a motion to approve the contents of the consent agenda as proposed? It is moved by Jeff and seconded by Helen. Any discussion or comments on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Abstentions, all right, that's all set. And on 5, action items, item 5.1. We want to entertain a motion to recommend
Board of Finance and City Council approve the leasing space at the airport to Jones Payne's Group as outlined in our agenda packet. It was moved by Jeff, is there a second? That's seconded by Helen, and discussion to be led by Nick.
Thank you. This is a pretty simple building lease or room lease, to be more specific. This is to the Jones Payne Group, and I'm sure you recognize the name. Jones Payne has been pretty instrumental in our noise insulation and our noise exposure maps and compatibility programs for many years. They are also a program manager for the residential sound insulation program, and this particular lease happens to be literally right next door, right behind this wall, right behind the TV that we're looking at. Which was recently renovated by our staff to allow additional square footage to be leasable. Pretty straightforward terms, 1-year lease with a month after that, 3% annual escalation, so it's just shy of $10,000 a year on the rent. But the really huge benefit for us is this would be the staging point and the communication point for our residential sound insulation program. Not only will we have some detailed information outside of the room in this hallway, which will be adjacent to our main entrance to admin currently. But this will also be a location that residents that want to participate in the program to meet with our program manager and the Jones Payne Group, and also see sample products like windows and doors and things like that. That is the extent of this lease. The reason it's a short term is this is not going to be the permanent location for that process. We do have a life estate parcel out on Airport Parkway, and the idea is that house would not be removed but be utilized and renovated to be the future location of this new office and demonstration area, along with my hope is to connect it to a future bike path, walking path that would also have the ability to pump your tires up and get some water. But for now, this is what we would like, where we would like the Jones Payne Group, and of course, they are very happy.
Thank you, Nick. Commissioners, any discussions on this one?
When were they renting or where was their office in the most recent round? They didn't have
They didn't have one, so a lot of times, and we'll continue to do this as well, a lot of times they would meet at homeowners' properties. That's not going away, that's still the main option, but they did not have a property that they use.
Go ahead, Brent.
All right, thanks. I'm curious if there will be translation or interpretation services available.
There are not just for this program, but as a city as a whole, specific to this program, we do have some of the documents on the btpsound.com website translated into many different languages. The city is also undergoing a translation and language audit of all of our programs, and the airport's definitely going to be a part of that, so we can incorporate additional opportunities for translation.
Yeah, it's as you can imagine, especially important for our residents in Winooski. And I want to note while this is short term, this is presumably, on a bus line that's frequently used. So I don't know about the future location. I see pros and cons with that. To the extent that the future location could also be on the bus line, that might be something worth considering.
Yeah, great point.
And I guess when you do have hours, more details available, definitely interested in sorry. Definitely interested in knowing and being able to share that with our residents, so that should they want the option to make an appointment or to swing by, that they know what to expect as far as hours of operation.
Yeah, absolutely. On the homepage of btvsound.com. Our Jones Payne Group contact information as well as the project manager is on there now, and we'll also add those hours of operation for this new space.
Great, appreciate it, thank you.
All right, thank you, Brent. Any other commissioner comments on this item? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Move on to item 5.2, and we wanted to entertain a motion to recommend that the Board of Finance and City Council approve the execution of the contract with ECI for road work on Aviation Avenue and Eagle Drive as outlined in our agenda packet.
I'll move it.
That was moved by Helen, is there a second? Second. That's seconded by Jeff, and discussion be led by Rick.
You want to take it?
Surprise. You know how that.
I think it's supposed to say like,
Oh.
You want me to do it?
I'm waiting for that. Yes.
Oh, yes, please, you're doing it, you want me to do it?
No.
So basically, if anybody's driven on Aviation Avenue or Eagle Drive lately, they can tell it needs to be rehabilitated. So this includes an 1.5 mil and overlay of those two roads, which will be beneficial to all the people traveling on it, but also to our snowplows. And if you haven't taken a ride on lately, you should take a ride up through there, because it's a beautiful ride with the new beta facilities and hangars and all that up through there, but those roads don't meet standard. So.
just a quick add, this is part of kind of larger picture asphalt rehab program. You have seen that the front driveway of the airport, half of it has been rehab. We're gonna be doing the other half probably next year. This one is next in line because of the conditions.
All right, commissioners, any discussion on this point? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? And our last action item is item 5.3, and we want to entertain a motion to recommend the Board of Finance and City Council approve the application of contract with Paving Associates for marketing and promotional services as outlined in our agenda packet. As moved by Jeff, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Helen. Discussion? It's been on the agenda, Jeff this time.
Great, thanks. Yeah, this is our standard marketing contract. We've been with Hagan Associates for several years now. We put it out to bid for a 5-year contract. We did receive 7 responses. And we scored them. We had a committee that scored them. And unanimously we decided to stick with Hagan Associates. So the contract is yearly, 5 years, $450,000 a year. That's the cap. And I will say that with the addition of myself and Alex on our team, our marketing assistant, I think we'll be much more efficient with these dollars than in the past, and have more eyes on us. So we're definitely be more strategic in how we approach spending our dollars. But that is the proposal for you.
Thank you, Jeff. Commissioners, any discussion on this point?
Is any of that,
Go ahead.
I was gonna ask you, is any of that budget used for air service recruitment or retention, or is it more traditional marketing?
A little bit of both. We partner, we have new air services that come in. We dedicate a certain amount of the budget for new airline comes in to promote those new services. So we've been advertising pretty heavily with Breeze. So that's helping retain and hopefully expand those services as well, as they're pretty full flights.
And that program is part of our portal incentive program. So we have a 2-year waiver of fees associated with a new carrier coming on, as well as $50,000 towards a marketing campaign. Yeah, we don't generally as a policy, we don't send $50,000 to a new carrier. We work with them to program where that advertising is sent, which we have a little bit more control over, and the FAA recommends that way. Generally, that $450,000 though isn't to reach for new airlines. It really is just to incentivize them to come. $50,000, as you can imagine, is pretty small drop in the grand scheme of their budget. a really good app for us
Just an important part of the conversation with airlines, they wanna know if you have a package or does everyone have something similar, or is it very
Yeah.
competitive?
Incentive packages are huge when we have a conversation. The marketing, not so much, unless it's a new carrier in the industry. And every dollar matters for that particular process. Whether you're talking a new route or a new brand new airline coming to this airport, not having an air carrier incentive program is a great downfall. We just wrote one 2 years ago, so we have a nice formal, this is on our website now too, which again is some guidance that you get that A has for us. And it really sets the tone and the expectation to be fair across all airlines.
What typically are incentives?
The big ones are landing fees and terminal rental fees are entirely waived for the first 2 years. The passenger facility charge, that charge that goes on the ticket, we cannot waive that, that's a federally regulated program. Those are the big ones, those are the ones to get them on site, get their feet into the airport, make sure that they have the contracted services that they need, and then go from there. We will throw on as much as we can partnerships with Heritage Aviation, which has been hugely successful as well, to help with flowage fees or fuel truck pull-up fees. Especially again with small fees. And then we have the $50,000.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Tim. This is a new, I'm just sort of, the agenda package I got just had a memo. I'm just curious, sort of. Some of these businesses or, agencies I know, some I don't. How close were these grouped? I mean, how easy or hard was this decision?
So Hagan and Associates is our current contract.
Okay, that's what I thought I heard that, but I was remembering there was a dispute with a former, so I didn't know how long ago. Okay. Forget, that answers my question. That's what, I didn't know if this was a new relationship and just wanting to know how tight these were and why Hagan was chosen, but they're the incumbent. I thank you for that information. I'll withdraw my question.
Anything else on this topic? Devin, just one question. So I noticed that it's a 5-year commitment. Is that pretty standard? Because that might seem a little long to me, but I don't.
That's what we've done in the past, I believe, and we're actually, the contract expired a while ago, they didn't much. Until we went through this entire process, as well, but yeah, for something of this extent, it's pretty common.
Okay.
And their last contract was a 5-year contract. These ones are more complicated because they're not just scored based on price, right? We set our budget is $450,000, and that obviously will fluctuate over time. So these ones are really particular with the qualifications and really the quality of work that we need to see. So having that 5-year contract is really important so that we're.
Right, was anything else on this topic? See, none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That concludes our action items. We move on to item 6, which are some updates on the taxi ordinance. Nick, do you want to introduce our special guest stars for this meeting?
Great, special guest stars. So we have 3 guests joining us today. Tenzin, he is the taxi administrator for the city of Burlington. Haley is our assistant city attorney, and Paul Hines is the chair of the vehicle for hire board. And they're here to update us on a couple of taxi ordinance and policy changes.
Great, thanks so much, Nick, and thanks for having us. I had hoped to get across town in person, but the day got tighter and tighter, so appreciate you accommodating us by video. Like Nick said, my name's Haley McClenahan. I'm one of the assistant city attorneys here over at City Hall. And we are here to get the commission's feedback on some proposed changes to the city's ordinance, as well as the airport's rules and regulations that will, if accepted and ratified by the city council, will have some impacts on taxi operations at the airport. So there are 3 specific changes that are being recommended, 2 of which will directly implicate operations at the airport. So I'll go through those quickly, and then I'll turn it over to Tenzin with the Vehicle for Hire Admin Office and Paul Hines, who is the chair for the Vehicle for Hire Board, to talk a little bit more about the staff and the board perspective. And ultimately, what we're looking for is a recommendation to the city council from the commission that these changes be accepted and made part of the city's ordinance and the airport's regulations. So, like I said, there are 3 changes being contemplated. I'll just quickly go. I'll give a quick summary of each, and then with the chair's permission, I'll share my screen to kind of walk through the details of the proposal. The first change that we'll talk about is including a provision in the airport rules and regs to make clear that a taxi meter is to be used when drivers are picking up in the queue line at the airport for all rides that will be 50 miles or less in duration. The second change that is being recommended has to do with making sure that all taxi drivers in the city, but also at the airport, accept credit card payment for payment of fares. And then the third change, which doesn't have a direct implication on the airport, but is part of this package, is to allow a bit more flexibility in allowing members of the Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee of the City Council to sort of step in and help support the Vehicle for Hire Board when they have a low membership on that board and need more members in order to form a quorum to be able to do the business of the board and to hear complaints. So those are the 3 proposals. I'll go ahead and share my screen now if I am able to do that. Let's see. Okay, is everyone able to see my screen?
No,
Not yet.
Well, let's try that. How about now?
There we go.
Great. So this is the change that's being recommended to the airport rules and regulations, which is still overseen and within the authority of the city council. But again, given the implications on the airport, we definitely wanted to get airport commission feedback on this. So I'll give a quick overview, and then I'll let Paul and Tenzin jump in if they have anything to add. So right now, the way that our ordinance reads is that using a taxi meter in the city and at the airport is only required when the vehicle is acting as a taxi and is picking up street hails. And with talking with Director Longo about this, that is something that is not very commonplace in the city and is not very commonplace at the airport. I'll let Paul talk about this a little bit more, but over the past few months, we have seen an increasing number of complaints about confusion of when the meter is to be used for rides originating specifically at the airport, and when it is okay for drivers to charge sort of a flat rate that is negotiated between the driver and the passenger. And so this change would require the meter to be used for all rides originating from the queue line at the airport, provided that they're not expected to be over 50 miles in duration. And I can let Paul talk a little bit more about the rationale for that. But again, that would not apply to, as you'll see in the proposed subsection B, that would not apply to any rides that have been sort of prearranged before the driver enters the queue line. So for example, if someone called to arrange a ride before they land at the airport, made an online reservation, or made some other pre-arrangement, it would still be acceptable for them to pay a flat rate. What this is really getting at is how rates are charged when the first encounter between the driver and the passenger is in the queue line at the airport. So I'll let Paul and Tenzin jump in there, and then I'll turn to the other two changes or take questions from the commission as is your pleasure.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that, you know, we hear cases of complaints from customers who've had a bad experience with taxis, and almost all of them involve confusion about how much was going to be charged, or feeling like they weren't charged the right amount. And what we're really trying to do is just provide a really consistent experience. So people know they can go to the queue line, they'll get a consistent charge, and it'll be on the meter. And it's just, I think, a much better experience for the airport business travelers in particular than having to kind of negotiate a rate. It feels very, I know for me, it's felt kind of not a very fun experience to have to negotiate before you can get in the taxi. Or I've had people who like didn't know they were supposed to negotiate, and they get charged who knows what amount on the other end. So we're really just trying to provide a nice, consistent experience for people who travel to our city.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And I'll just add 2 additional points and then see if there are any questions from the commission. The first being that the Vehicle for Hire Board recently did update the taxi rates in the city. So I think that's important to note and for the commission to be aware of when considering this change, to bring it more into alignment with perhaps what drivers may be attempting to charge sort of during that negotiation process that I described. And then the second point that I wanted to raise was sort of the distinction of the 50 miles and why the Vehicle for Hire Board thought that was an important caveat, and maybe Paul can speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, so one of the members of the board is a taxi driver, and he was talking about, you know, these longer rides. You really, it depends. It depends on where it is and where the person's coming and whether you can get a ride back, whether it makes sense to charge the rate. And so instead of trying to come up with really complicated rates for those longer rides, our assumption is that if you're going further than, say, Rutland, you know, you should talk to the driver and figure out what's the right amount to charge. So in that case, it felt okay for, you know, to allow for some negotiation. It's still allowable to use the meter. It's just that we didn't want to make it, and to some extent also felt just sort of out of our jurisdiction. We are the city of Burlington. We are not governing the entire state of Vermont.
Thanks, Paul. And so those changes are primarily in the proposed subsection A and B for section 4.17 of the rules and regs of the airport. And then the second page is really just cleanup due to the shift of the sections. So really the meat of it is between lines 13 and 21 in this proposal. So I will stop sharing my screen for that one, and I can either take questions now or continue on to the second proposal and take questions at the end, whichever is preferred by the chair.
Sure, Haley, I think we'll do this in 2 parts, so commissioners, if you have any feedback on what you've seen so far, you can just share that.
I think it's great, glad we're doing this. I think to minimize the actual or perceived idea that, you know, people are getting taken advantage of. It's a good thing. Thanks for doing this.
Great. One thing I do want to give a shout out to the airport for putting up signage there. We might want to update that signage after this is passed, but like I do appreciate that there's been signage put up, and it's much improved.
Yes.
And the committee, the committee and the staff really helped guide that new signage, which has the new rates on it. It's also associated with asks for a bill of rights, which goes to the website so that Tenson and his team can really focus on some of these complaint process and just allow passengers to. Sorry to cut you off there, Tenson.
Yeah, so I just want to add one more thing. So I know with this ordinance changes, I think it would be helpful if we can get a little assistance from the grounds transportation. Like I said, we're not there to enforce. We can't be there to enforce. I know I'm not sure, like Isaac, if they can, if the drivers can be just reminded once in a while, hey, these are the rules, you need to, I hear like, with the airport rules, they're not supposed to leave their taxi or, the queue line, but the drivers are doing so. But if we can get like some, like little assistance from the ground transportation, just to remind the drivers that, hey, this is the rule, this, you have to follow these rules. That would be great, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I guess I just have a point of clarification that before it was this mix of sometimes you negotiate, sometimes you don't, it's a little confusing. So now we're saying it is, I guess, non-negotiable, to use the term, like you're gonna pay whatever the meter says you pay at the end of the ride. Right, so
Except on the.
unless you're over 50. Yeah. So I think, yeah, just updating the signage, because I think we could have a reverse confusion. There are people who are used to negotiating and now all of a sudden they can't, so.
Yeah.
Good to update that signage to say that any ride over 50 miles is, you'll pay whatever the meter says.
Right, when this.
Yeah, assuming this is, yes. All right, commissioners, any other feedback on the first resolution? All right, we will move on to comments on and discussion on resolution number 2. So Heather, you want to take that away?
Great, thanks so much. All right, I'm going to attempt to screen share again here. Let's see if it goes more smoothly this time. All right. So hopefully everyone is looking at a document that is an update to Chapter 30 of the Burlington City Ordinances. So just as an overview, these changes, if accepted by the City Council, would apply citywide, but certainly would have impact on taxi operations at the airport. So the first change that you'll see here is in lines 15 through 20. This is that change I was talking about as far as a sort of alternate for composition of the vehicle for hire board. The vehicle for hire board regulates all taxi licensing in the city. You have to have a City of Burlington taxi license in order to be eligible for a queue permit at the airport. And it's a 5-member board, although as of late, there are only 3 members actively on the board. And so if there's an absence or an unavailability of one of the members, it's been a really challenging time for the board to be able to conduct business in that instance. So this recommendation would permit the Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee of the City Council to appoint a member to sit on the board in those instances of low numbers, so that the board can continue to do its business without having to sort of pause for those months when a quorum can't be reached. So that's the first change. And then the second change to Chapter 30 that's being recommended is a recommendation that all drivers in the city and at the airport be required to accept credit card payments as a method of payment for folks that are taking taxi services in the city and at the airport. Currently, we are aware that there are at least 1 or 2 drivers who are regularly at the airport that accept cash only as a method of payment, and that it has created some confusion and some consternation for travelers who in 2024 may not be routinely carrying cash. And so there is still some details to be worked out as far as when this would become effective. But what the Vehicle for Hire Board and both of these proposals have been vetted and given additional consideration by the TOOT committee, are suggesting that in the interim that visible signage be posted on vehicles that are cash only until the credit card requirement takes effect. And that's going to be another area where I imagine that the vehicle for hire admin office is going to lean heavily on ground transportation staff to make sure that that signage is properly displayed, so that folks are on notice if they don't have the appropriate payment method to not seek a ride from that driver. And so those are the two changes proposed in chapter 30. And Tenzin or Paul, do you have anything that I've missed for these two changes?
No.
No, I would just maybe to provide kind of some of the why on this. I think a pretty significant fraction of people who come through the airport and use taxis are business travelers. And so having a credit card, being able to pay with a credit card is really important for those. I think it's a much better, it's important to be able to pay with a credit card when you're on business travel.
And I do recall that there was also some discussion of as rates are updated, to consider baking in the cost of credit card fees into those rates. So that's definitely an opportunity for the board when it looks to set those rates in the future. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Britt, you're in it.
Yeah, I was actually gonna just ask about credit card fees and if the ordinance changes were accounting for that in any way, because those are applied as a percentage rather than like a flat fee typically, and can add up quite a bit pretty quickly. So I'm glad you all are thinking about it.
Thank you, Britt. Chip.
I understand the continued challenge in finding people to serve on the board, but I don't know that I fully understand what I'm reading this as not like this interim appointment is not like but as a meeting starts, if there's not a quorum, it's sort of a short term. I don't fully understand if Haley's looking for comments, not changes. I don't understand why it's only for good cause. If you're short, you're short. Whether someone has I don't understand why they've added cause as the trigger. But I also I don't know that this is the fix. I mean, the better fix is to appoint 5 people. If the chair can find someone, I don't understand why we're just not appointing 5. This seems like a very convoluted way to be able to do business. That's my comment. I'm not, I guess on the second change, I'm not entirely sure how it works. So if, my recollection of the queue is it literally is a line. So I'm just worried about how this is going to work if a cab is sat in the queue who takes only cash and the person there wants, has to pay by credit card. How's that, like, does that person have to leave the queue and get back in line so the next cab can go up or if there's someone behind, if there are multiple passengers, I suppose that's not an issue. It seems odd to me, rather than just have an effective date that says this is the date and we're going there. I'm worried this is just going to create more confusion than it's worth by just having an effective date whereby the change goes into effect. That's it. Thank you.
I'm happy to respond to some of that now or take additional questions. What's the preference of the chair?
No, you can take that question.
So thanks for that feedback, Commissioner Reason. That's really helpful. I will just say as to the first proposed change regarding the composition of the board, and perhaps Chair Hines can speak to this as well, is that it has been a challenge, as I understand it, to recruit for this board. I think that the goal is always to get these boards fully staffed. There was a period of time before Chair Hines was on the board, actually, where there were no members of the board due to recruitment issues. And so the TUC actually stepped in for a limited purpose of hearing appeals, which is contemplated by the ordinance. The point as to good cause is also well taken, and certainly something that we can continue to workshop for an alternative as this proceeds to the city council. So I agree it is not a long-term solution, and certainly recruitment it would appear to be the solution, and would turn to Chair Hines for any additional comments on the need for this particular insertion, or some ability of flexibility when it comes to membership on this board.
Yeah, just recruiting's been really hard. It's been really, for some reason, this is not the most exciting board to serve upon. And so it's been hard to get people. So we do have 3 people currently, and we have reached out, and city council's reached out, but we haven't been able to find anybody who wants to join. So if you know someone who would like to join a very exciting vehicle for hire commission, please let me know.
Well, I mean, some odd thing to consider. I mean, unfortunately, people can only serve on one board, so I don't know whether that's an impediment, if there's sort of some relief to allow people to serve on more than one board if it's the vehicle for hire board. I mean, this has been a problem staffing this since it was created, many years ago. I mean, for what it's worth, I think the better solution is to have TUC step in. And this shouldn't be, Paul, this shouldn't be your job to recruit members. I mean, this really is up to the mayor and the council. There are people, we have people that serve as fence viewers. We have people on the Board of Tax Appeals. Those are no more exciting positions than vehicle for hire, having served in a few of those roles. So I appreciate it's your problem because you don't have a quorum, but I respectfully would kind of push it back on the mayor and the council. Like, this is not, you guys just need to find people. I'm not understanding, if you've got someone, Paul, who's willing to sort of step up and serve on a short-term basis, I would assume that person might be available on a longer-term basis. So I'm not sort of sure I
think the problem is that, like, the way that the ordinance is written, either the TUC completely runs the board, or you have quorum. And so what this allows us to do is, like, we know someone's going to be absent, we can pull in someone from TUC to serve and make quorum is the purpose. So we can get a substitute from TUC when needed.
Oh, okay. So that's actually helpful. I didn't fully understand that the committee, you were intending to appoint a member of TUC. So Haley, you might want to clarify that, because I didn't read it that way. I read that as meaning a member of the committee, meaning a member of the public that the TUC chair was appointing to serve on an interim basis, not a TUC designee.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the time this would be the TUC chair themselves who would come in and say, okay, I need to help out because we couldn't find someone. It's also a motivator for them to find someone.
I understand. Now I'm reading it. I understand that. That's not how I read it when I read it for the first time. So I don't know, Haley, how to suggest to clarify that. But now I understand, Paul, you're saying that the plan, which I'm warmer to, is to have TUC, the chair of TUC, appoint a member of the TUC committee to serve on an interim basis. Okay, that I thought that was a member of TUC just going to any member of the public, and I was trying to figure out how that was easier than getting a permanent person to serve on the committee.
Yeah.
Great.
But thank you. The point to clarity is well taken, and we'll continue to workshop the language, and perhaps maybe it's as simple as in line 18, just repeating the title of the committee, although I had a concern for redundancy. better to be redundant than unclear. So we'll continue to workshop the language, and thank you for that helpful feedback. I'm happy to address the comments surrounding the second update, but I do see, Chair, that you have a hand, so I defer to you before I move on.
Greg, is your comment on this, on the section you just talked about, or is it about the credit card, taking credit cards section?
Neither.
Either. Okay, well, go ahead, Greg, that's fine.
I support the changes in the code in general. I'm just trying to look at it from the driver's perspective, and because they provide an essential service and we need them, and there are times when it's difficult late at night for drivers to be there. And obviously that can create some problems. Get off the flight and there's no one there. So I'm wondering if someone, maybe this commission that hopefully we can staff completely, could provide some sort of incentives. I don't want to add any extra work to our airport staff, but one possible incentive might be to have, since we're doing some signage, to have something that is like the driver of the month, or something that just recognizes the hard work and kindness that many of these drivers provide to our community members. I know that, you know, I lost a phone in the back of a cab leaving the airport one time, and got it back, and there was money in there, and it was just totally restored. And I just sort of was very grateful for the driver who did that, and I'm sure that he's not alone in the quality and professionalism of his work.
Thank you, Greg.
I like that idea. I mean, we, one of the, you know, maybe more practical than that, but we did create a nighttime adder to the new rate, so that there is a $4 additional amount that goes into the rate for nighttime pickup. Because I've also had that experience of like being there at 2 a.m. because the flight's late, and there's no cars available. So, but certainly if there are other ideas for how we can reward drivers for providing a valuable service, that sounds great.
I get, well, and this isn't something that you probably can change, but I'm just curious how much work this is. And I just wonder, you know, I think as we try to have committees that incorporate the public to help us with everything, we get an awful lot of committees, and some are fun to be on, and others are like, ooh, I didn't even know that one existed, and you can't find people. So I'm just curious why the Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee of the City Council, I'm assuming that's not just City Council members?
It's a subset.
It's so it's only, so they need help in looking at all the appointments or licenses. That's what they do. They look at people who are applying to be a.
The primary role is to actually, it's like a pseudo judiciary group. Not, I mean, that's probably the wrong word, and Haley, you should correct me, but we have to hear complaints. I think there's some motivation to have that be a more of a you know, a board of peers that are reviewing those complaints rather than city council, but I'm not sure.
I didn't realize that was just.
Yeah, it's a subset of council members that focus on transportation. So
And then they
matters. They make a
committee
that the team.
Right.
Well, that's the vehicle for hire, which is
Right.
separate.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's a different one. This is.
So theoretically, like, so.
They are well regulated.
So
aren't
vehicle
they?
for hire is like similar, it's like similar to the airport. It's generally comprised of constituents. Focus on that particular issue. Then you have the transportation, energy, utility body of the city council, which are councilors that focus on those issues. Then you have city councils.
I understand that. It just seems like there's a lot of committees that focus on taxi drivers.
Well, Paul, how often would you say that the two really takes up an agenda item on vehicle for hire or taxi operations. Mostly that's your committee that would really discuss that.
Yeah, to my knowledge, only when we ask them to, which is not very often.
Good luck. With proving.
Any other questions on that? My only questions, and again, it's the same topic as Chip. But as I read this, it could be like, oh, it's, I don't know what time meeting normally starts, but it's 4:01 and we don't have quorum, so I'm gonna call up the chair of the TUC and ask if I can get somebody. Or is it more of like, we've had a vacancy on this panel for an extended period of time. We need the TUC to step in, and the way I read this, like either of those could happen. And so I don't know if the intent is more of what, the latter than the former. But the way it's read to me, it's like you just call up the TUC chair and say, like, hey, can you make it, because we got a quorum.
I mean, certainly we were basically trying to cover both cases. Because hopefully we avoid that 401 case, but the goal is that, you know, if we really needed to and we had to hear a case, we could pull in somebody.
I think some helpful context might be that when we do hear complaints and potential action is taken on a driver's license, we have to give them sufficient notice of those hearings. And so oftentimes if something comes up last minute, you know, a hearing that's been warned and scheduled for, you know, at minimum 1 week is now having to be postponed due to quorum issue. And that is something that we have seen come up before.
Chip, go ahead.
Yeah, but I'm not a huge fan of the 401. I mean, with all due respect, like there's prep work that needs to be done, there's submissions. I don't think it's fair to drop someone in. Not, you know, on either from the city's perspective or the driver's perspective. I think that's not a good precedent to set.
Thank you, Chip. Hopefully, you folks will take that into consideration. And then the other point I was gonna raise is the same point that was already raised by Chip with regard to the payment method. I do find it confusing that we're saying that we're gonna require means of payment, and then the next sentence says, those who don't accept those means of payment. Like that, I don't understand why that language is there at all, because it's now a requirement to accept credit, so.
Yeah.
Clarify why that following sentence is there.
It's there primarily for the transition, well, exclusively for the transition period. Basically, that upon passage sentence becomes useless on the effective date. But there was concern from the transportation committee that we wouldn't have clarity until the effective date, and so this provides some sort of semi-clarity in the interim. But I kind of agree with you, actually. So I'm but that was feedback from the city council members.
Okay. And Mark, I see you have your hand up.
And I'll just make a quick introduction. This is City Councilor Mark Barlow. He's also the chair of the Transportation, Energy and Utility.
Yeah, is Mark was going to join here. Is Mark here?
Yes, his hand up, but
I saw his hand up.
Oh, he's in the attendees. That's what.
Oh, there we go.
He's desperately trying to talk.
He's like.
Yeah, I'm actually need to run, but I know Mark has a lot of the same contacts that I do, so I think I may bid you all adieu and then pass to Mark and fill in some details from city council perspective.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody. I apologize, I'm late. I had another work meeting that I had to attend. I can add a little bit of context to the comments that I heard before I was promoted to panelist, and those were comments that came from Councilor Bergman at the TUC meeting where we reviewed the ordinance changes, and he wanted to be more explicit about how that transition period would be handled. The hope and the intent is that it would be a very short transition period.
Okay. I'm just, yeah, I agree with that, there's no effective dates, I wasn't sure what all the thoughts were as to why we didn't have an effective date there, but to the extent that it's short, I mean, that's obviously the best solution.
There's a cost to that too, for signage and things like that might be tricky, because after this is effective. That signage does effectively need to be removed now, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so that would be something to consider in the shoes of a driver.
Go ahead, Chip.
Counselor Barlow, I guess I'm not, this is Chip Mason, I'm not sure I understand, because until it's effective, you're allowed to pay with cash. So I don't fully understand, I mean, other than if TUC is gonna require the airport to publicize that there's an effective date and this is, the change is gonna be effective on such and such a date. I don't really understand why we're requiring verbal disclosure and signs that said you can pay with cash when you can unless and until the effective date. It just seems odd to me.
I think the intent is to address the cause of a lot of the complaints that come to the Vehicle for Hire Licensing Board. Many of the complaints have to do with the pricing and and the way the payment methods and things. People are confused by that. There's an expectation perhaps that they can pay by card, which is one of the reasons that these changes were introduced. And I may have missed the very first part of your discussion, and they may have come in.
No, I mean, that's accurate. I mean, how far out are you thinking of an effect? I mean, again, it's sort of the devil's in the details of like, if you're thinking a year out or as opposed to, I mean, you're basically asking for some publicity that now you can force someone to, or the drivers are allowed not to accept credit cards. I mean, that's in essence. But you're now putting the onus on the airport and the drivers to sort of publicize that fact when it's not currently a requirement. I don't mean, the reality, I'm not gonna short circuit. I guess if you're looking for comment, my comment would be like, this is confusing. I don't pick a date, make a conversion. If you want the airport to sort of publicize and put out that effective on such and such a date, everyone has to pay by credit card. That seems much easier than this sort of interim oddity that is being asked. That's all. Thank you.
Fair enough.
I would agree with
Chair, if I may just maybe offer some context or my understanding of the discussion at the committee level on this, which is right now, any payment method goes. Drivers can accept only cash. They can use credit card. They can also accept cash. I think the intention of this is that cash can still be accepted if both parties agree, but that the drivers have to accept credit card by a certain date to be determined. There was discussion around that getting drivers up to speed on that potentially being a burden, so wanting to give some additional time beyond a 21-day effective period to allow for that. But in the meantime, the committee was concerned about the lack of notice to the traveling public about the cash issue, or the possibility that they may get into a cab, only have a credit card, and that driver at the end of the fare will say, I only take cash. That was what my understanding is of what the committee was trying to address, and that the committee felt even within that effective period that was too long to let the confusion continue.
Chip, does that address your concern?
I'm not on Tuke anymore, so I don't have a say, but it's, from my perspective, this is pretty confusing, and I don't think that serves the public or drivers well, so I'll shut up at that.
Well, thank you for voicing your concerns. Commissioners, any other comments on this change? Or proposed change, I should say? All right, Haley, Paul, Tenzin, anything, Mark, anything else you're looking for from us tonight?
We ideally would be looking for a motion and a vote from this committee to recommend these changes to the city council for action. You know, either as is or with any potential changes of note from the commission. Alternatively, you know, we just would like to be able to represent to the council that the commission has had an opportunity to review and to provide feedback.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna necessarily call for a motion to approve these as they're presented, because I think we've provided some feedback for all of you to consider. But I would consider that you have done a great job of bringing this to us and giving us an opportunity for us to weigh in on the issues that we see with the language. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. And nothing further from me. So unless there's anything further from staff or from Councillor Barlow on this, thank you for your feedback and comments on this proposal.
And I just, before you go, Haley, Tim, I think would it be appropriate to make a motion to ensure that the minutes from this meeting that reflect comments in this conversation are shared with Tuke for its consideration as they, you know, finalize and move forward with these respective ordinance changes?
Yeah, I don't have an objection to that. I don't know how detailed the minutes are necessarily going to be with regard to all of the specific comments that were brought up. So I certainly have no objection to sharing the minutes with Tuke in that regard. I don't know if I need a necessary motion in that regard, but we'll certainly share these minutes.
There's also a recording.
I guess my question is, Haley, does it make it more challenging for you to accomplish what you want to accomplish? We don't have any kind of stronger motion from us. I do, at least I feel like it's a good thing you're going in the right direction with this. I support these clarifications and don't want it to be perceived that we are against that. So.
Well, I mean, if that, Jeff, and I'm not intending to convey that we're not, you know, so maybe it's amending the motion to express, you know, the support of the airport commission in terms of, or in favor of these changes, but also request that, you know, the minutes be shared, as well as, I'm sure Haley's taken notes and Mark's been present too, in terms of overall comments. I don't mean to imply that we are not supportive. I'll speak for myself. Some of this is a little bit confusing, and I appreciate it's a little hard to sort of wordsmith at a commission level as opposed to the Tuke level. I am also indifferent. I don't need a motion. I was trying to be helpful. If you feel, Haley, if you and Mark feel you've got what you need, then we can go to next agenda item.
Councillor Barlow has his hand up, so I'll defer to him.
So I think that I don't know if I heard all the feedback. I heard the last bit of feedback. I certainly go to the recording and or the minutes and convey the commission's comments in subsequent discussions on these ordinance changes. I don't think the intention right now is for them to go back to Tuke. I think they're on their way to the full council. So just as an FYI, but I can coordinate with Haley on that, and we'll figure out where what council agenda they'll be on, and I'll make sure that everyone in the commission knows that as well.
My expectation is the airport commission minutes would be adopted or made available to the full council yeah, right.
Yes.
Okay, so
as part of the agenda item,
right,
I'll make sure of
so
that.
we don't need them. That's a long-winded way, Chair Williams is saying, we don't need a formal motion. They're included as part of the packet that would go up to the full council anyway. Thank you. I'll withdraw my motion then, Tim.
So just, I guess just to build on that, are you looking for a motion specifically? Because I've sort of written something that I think will thread the needle there, but if you don't need a motion, then we don't need to go through that process.
I would defer to the pleasure of the commission. But what I will say is I think, as Councillor Barlow pointed out, we have a good sense of the commission's feedback on some of these items. It will be reflected in the minutes and it will be communicated to the full council for their consideration, and perhaps it will impact the council's next steps on this, either taking action on it, in one meeting, or making a further referral for additional comments from the ordinance committee or some other action. So I think certainly from my perspective, I have an understanding of what the commission's feedback is, and that we will make sure it is relayed adequately to the city council. That said, of course, defer to the commission if it wants to take a formal, if it wants to formalize its position on its feedback.
Okay, yeah, I don't think we need to. I just didn't know if you needed one to move forward, but hearing that that's not necessary, I don't think we need a motion on our side.
Very good. Well, thank you again all so much for your time this evening and for your helpful feedback on these proposals.
Thank you for your time as well. We appreciate it. Thank you for
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
That wraps up item 6. We will now move on to item 7, which is the construction update on Larry.
All right, so I'll give you a quick highlights and updates from the update. As you know, we moved forward last commission meeting, the ability for us to motion to move forward with a Northern Borders Regional Grant for $1.78 million for the use of domestic timber in our next project. At that time, we didn't know if we were going to get that grant. We were notified yesterday that we were going to get that full grant at Ripley. So that's the first update.
That's the first time in, well, since we've been here, since all of us have been here, that we've received a non-FAA grant, and now this is a almost $1.8 million grant, and it's specific towards our mission of sustainability with mass timber. So it's a lot of work went into it, a lot of financial work, a lot of construction and phasing and communication and writing to make this grant happen. And couldn't be happier with the Northern Border Regional Commission, and looking forward to working with them on implementing the actual product.
The second item, updates from the photos in my report. The cell paper is substantially complete and in use. It will be inspected by us and the FAA over the next couple of weeks. And that punch list actually has already been established for some cleanup items. So that is being used. There will be the tie down. The only thing, it has been line straight and painted, but there's tie downs that still need to be in place for aircraft. The other highlight from my update was that the city council did approve Nick's ability to sign all the upcoming grants that we hopefully will receive. The word from the FAA is that 6 of the 7 grants we applied for have moved from the technical review to where they are issued eventually. There's one that's not. I have 2 questions to answer, which I should get back to them tomorrow. So that's a little bit of further update that $55 million we hope is on the way. So that's all my clarification and update to be updated.
Thank you, Larry.
Any questions?
Any questions for Larry? All right, seeing none, thank you, Larry. And we now move on to the financial update from Ray.
Very much. So this month, we are looking at the revenues and expenditures through the end of May, and as well as the revenue recovery metrics. Because this was done last week and I finalized it on Thursday, you have estimated numbers for the banking, because I wasn't completely through the end of the year, and the AIP received. So our year-to-date revenues were $24.77 million. The operating revenues continue to be higher than primarily due to the rental car revenues and the parking garage revenues. So I'm pleased that we're seeing growth in those revenues, especially since it's fairly significant year over year. If you want to see the details, you can look at directly the details. The expenses through May were 16.17 million. Those are also higher than last year. We've been continuing, and I sort of try to bring to your attention those areas that are higher. I mean, you can always look at the detail, but again, a lot of that is some big repairs and maintenance ongoing projects that we have. And just sort of also, being upfront about the salaries, employee benefits that are $870,000 higher, and consulting and professional $242,000 higher. So kind of goes through the bigger increases that we have, as opposed to ones that are much more level. The cash that we had as of June 27th, we had $6.4 million in the airport international account. We did not owe the city any money. We paid it back for any of our payroll or bills. And our AIP receivable was $6.66 million. That is quite the number, but a lot of that is we are working very actively on closing out some grants, which we have a significant, about $3 million that once we get through those grant closeouts will come back to us pretty quickly. And so I'm expecting hopefully once we submit the closeout packages, there's a little bit, the FAA takes their time reviewing it, so we'll go fast, and we'll go slower, and then we'll be able to get the reimbursements. And we have almost $3 million that we've spent to do design work on like our next project and our runway project. So once we get our new grants, then we can go in immediately and draw that, get reimbursed ourselves. So we're actively doing that as quickly as we are able to do that, I guess I'll put it that way. But the financial, it's very much again as I anticipated or expected. And our overall expenses are going to be less than what we budgeted for the whole year. So that's always a good thing for our budgeting performance. That is the highlights of the financial package for this particular committee meeting.
Thanks, Marie. Any questions or comments for Marie? All right, thank you, Marie. We will move on to item 9, noise compatibility. This is Larry Sleep.
Okay, just a couple of updates, clarifications. We are back on track moving forward with the noise exposure map and the contours. There was a little holdup with FAA headquarters, that's above our region, with regard to one aircraft that takes off from here and lands near here, related to that contour, and that finally got resolved. We are now back into moving all that forward and should be able to get back out to the public in September, October, maybe early November with that information. So that's resolved. As far as the residential sound insulation program, there's no real update other than what's been provided. There still is a little bit of holdup because we have that delta of 34 homes that we want to move forward, but it's in a different decibel level. And headquarters still is reviewing some update that we need to finish that acoustical testing to move those 34 homes. That still hasn't been resolved at headquarters, but it's coming. So other than that, we're moving forward. We did finish, I think, a couple weeks ago, all the inventory and takeoffs from the 52 homes that are moving forward for construction, and we anticipate any day now a schedule on how we're going to move those 52 homes forward. And then also, like I already reported, the phase 4 grant, which included 16 homes construction and 50 more homes outreach, is gone back for our grant issuance. It's technically complete. So that's all I have.
Comments or questions for Larry this side? Go ahead, Rick.
Thanks for the update as always, and I, want to thank you again for the continued changes and improvements to the memos that you've been adding for clarity. For, I guess, page 42 of 50 of the packet, just curious if the Gantt chart was updated to. It looks like it has been, but I just wanted to confirm.
It was.
And I believe that's updated on the website as well.
Yeah.
And are you still anticipating having another technical advisory committee meeting this summer?
I'd expect maybe September now, to be honest with you.
Probably October, so this next TAC meeting will be the release of the noise exposure map draft. And right now, that new date, because of the delays with the FAA, is scheduled for October.
October, okay. And just again, confirming that is separate from any public hearings or feedback that will be scheduled?
That's correct. We wanted to continue to hold the technical advisory committee concurrently. Most likely, it's going to be probably the day after or even that same week. We would hold multiple public meetings, one in South Burlington and one in Winooski as well. We'll also have that same conversation about Williston if they want. But yes, separate, but we wanted multiple meetings.
Right, great. Appreciate the Gantt chart update and clarification on reasonable expectations for timeline. So thanks for all that.
All right, commissioners, anything else for Larry at this time? Okay, hearing none, we will now move into item 10, which is the director's report. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna kind of bounce around a little bit on you and hit it off to a couple of folks, but I'm gonna take some good news.
Leave the bad news.
Leave the bad news here.
I'm marking, I can make the bad news better.
So we've been reporting now since January 31st, when Breeze Airlines has started service here, that they're doing really well. Their planes are really full, and we were able to add another route. So we'll be starting on October 4th, a direct flight to Fort Myers. Again, with Breeze on their brand new A220s, which is incredibly exciting. A testament to how well they're doing and how full their aircraft are, and of course the demand to go to Florida even in the summertime, which is fantastic. This is announced as year-round service, although the Breeze is constantly evaluating things. And this will be technically our 5th destination with Breeze, and that might be tied for the most destinations that a single carrier out of BTV has. They're not done yet, and I can't wait to continue working with them and seeing where they go to next. There you go. Yeah.
Lucky the rest of them. Okay, I'll say the last two for you.
I'm shivering, so I need to.
That's why this is.
I am so glad I have.
We are very excited. So United, they resumed their, which is currently seasonal, to Denver. And we have been in a lot of conversations with them, really pushing hard, to make that year round. They haven't committed to anything yet, but they've been asking more questions. So I think that's a good sign. We recently attended the Touch a Truck event in South Burlington. We had our maintenance vehicle there. Successfully did a nice little marketing reel, and it got some good traction. Members of the community, various different communities, if they want us to touch a trucks or give presentations or whatever, they can contact us at advertising@maketv.arrow. That is on our website as well. We'd be more than happy to go in the community, especially with our new mascot, which has been ordered. Last week, Nick and we presented to the Northwestern Board of the Realtors. just discussing everything that occurred here at the airport, our employment data, Project X. We spent a good deal of time talking about the SAP program. We had a lot of really good presentations, questions in regards to that, but a 45-minute presentation. And I suspect that other realtor groups across the state might be asking us to visit them as well. And then, of course, Larry, you mentioned the timber grant that we received yesterday. That became public today, so hopefully we'll get some positive news on that.
The last two, I wanted to both answer Commissioner Oakleaf's request and Commissioner Riley's request for general aviation fuel usage. So for the hangar suppression system, of course, there was a press release by the National Guard that their hangar, their Army aviation hangar, did have a failure of their hangar suppression system, which did contain traces of PFAS in there. We are not involved in the hangar use, the operation of the use, or the cleanup of that facility, including how it went into the South Burlington sewage treatment plant and beyond. We'll continue to monitor and make sure that the Army Guard and the National Guard are performing their actions as they are required to do, both by the state and by their requirements. However, I do want to make it very clear that we are not part of it. We are not related to that particular cleanup. I did label it as a hangar suppression system because we do have other hangars on this airport that contain the same product. This is all required by both the National Fire Protection Association as well as the Federal Aviation Administration on the fire suppression system. Again, this is not coming from the fire trucks, but from the actual hangar fire systems or fire suppression systems. There are a few hangars right now. I know of 2 hangars that have that suppression system within the building. We don't own those hangars. Again, those are required by National Fire Protection Association, and we are aware of potentially changes in the NFPA requirements for hangars, but those are taking many years to go through, and I'm sure they're still going to continue to discuss it to make those changes for hangar suppression system. The hangars that we do own do have essentially a wet system or a traditional fire suppression system utilizing water, and those are the hangars that we own and operate. There is one hangar that we potentially might purchase that has the fire suppression system in it, but again, we'll have to truly understand what that system is as we go through the purchase process. So.
Yeah, just 'cause I think this, I know certainly Bryn wanted to go into this in greater detail, so Bryn, go ahead.
Yeah, just follow-up questions. We do have a good number of folks in Winooski that have quite a bit of concerns about the PFAS composition of the fire suppressant foam. And to the extent that there is any release to the Winooski River, which, is used for swimming and fishing. So concern over environmental exposure of such a highly toxic contaminant. I don't recall seeing a press release. Honestly, I think I only saw local news articles that picked up and provided some information. I don't know if there's any additional information that's planned or required, if it's just coordination with the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation in terms of spill response, or with federal agencies for that. But any additional information as far as testing, cleanup measures, public health notices, anything like that that you know of and can relay would be helpful. Because I just haven't seen anything, and it would be great to relay that to our population here.
Absolutely, and we can also provide you and the Wadowski team contact information to the Army Aviation facility and the director over there. So that those answers really do need to be answered directly by them, because we don't have that information, except that we are monitoring that the cleanup is consistent with those state regulations. But I think it's best answered by that Army National Guard or Army National Guard.
Yeah, fair enough. So the contact information, anything else that you're aware of, if you can send that my way, that would be much appreciated.
All right, Commissioners, anything on this narrow point before Nick continues his
So
director's
just
report?
my understanding is that a small amount of this was delivered directly to the, whatever it's called, the, water.
Yeah, that's the treatment.
The treatment plant, yeah, and they felt really confident that they could manage that, but they did say that some was released into the Winooski.
Yeah,
They couldn't extract all of it, but they could do a fair amount. So maybe, Bryn, it would be good to contact South Burlington's water department to find out what I'm not on the council anymore, so I didn't get an update. This was just kind of a passing conversation with the chair. They may have some more information that Winooski and its residents would either be happy about or worried about, but at least you'll have what their experience was.
And that's consistent with the message that the National Guard has given us as well.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, thanks. I'm wondering, Nick, because you mentioned that we don't own some of the hangars. I'm just wondering what, in terms of our policy and procedure, what is our spill response? I know that most of the people sort of lease the land. There must be some sort of policy or procedure that if there is a spill, that they contact you.
Yep, and not just with these systems, but also with fuel or other contamination that's spilled. There are spill prevention and control plans.
Yes, there is.
That's it, right? CSCCC. That are both consistent with those hangars that I was just mentioning with this fire suppression system, as well as contact the train of contact information, including the state of Vermont for proper notification through the Department of Environmental Control or Conservation. So yeah, absolutely, there are policies in place. Now, we don't regulate or monitor or inspect those systems, because those are regulated by either local fire building code requirements or more specifically through the National Fire Protection process.
And since we have a very long-term lease with the Guard now, and you just mentioned that they were required to contact you, did they contact you in this case?
They did, but I do want to make a clarification. This is not the lease with the Vermont Air National Guard. This is the Vermont Army National Guard and the hangar on that particular site. We do have a lease with the Army National Guard, but this is not associated with the new lease that we just extended with the Air National Guard. And yes, they did contact us on that the morning after.
And is the Army National Guard, are they sort of under the umbrella of this climate action plan that you sent us back in October, that the Air Force said that environmental controls is something that they take very seriously, and they put forth this 24-page document that demonstrated their commitment, both in words and hopefully in action, to make informed decisions to limit environmental degradation. And I'm just wondering how these PFAS chemicals that sat in this tank for a decade sort of fit into this master climate action plan.
I can definitely relay your question to the Army National Guard, but I'm not in a position to answer that because I don't know those exact answers to that question. I imagine, yes, they are part of that plan that you mentioned. But again, not directly related to the Army processes.
One final question, according to the information that was put forth in the 7 days blurb that was in there, people probably have seen that. It says that the Guard is going to hire contractors to determine the extent of any river contamination, and that is from the South Burlington Water Quality Superintendent. Is that report going to be shared with you, or I assume that report is going to be made public at some point?
I will also ask that question again. I don't know the answer specifically to when the report is going to be completed and when the release of that report publicly will be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Commissioners, any other questions on this particular item? Topic, I should say. So, Nick, you just want to finish up with general aviation fuel usage?
Yes, so Helen had asked a question to me via email, and I wanted to make sure I did send an email today, and then I wanted to make sure in this meeting that I also responded. The gist of the question that came from a constituent was related to what type of fuel was being used at the airport, specifically for small aircraft like piston powered single engine sized aircraft. That was the.
I think so, yeah, they were concerned with that it was lead fuel.
That it was lead fuel. Today and throughout the country, it's called 100 low lead fuel is being used with all piston powered aircraft. This is a federal aviation regulated fuel system as well as engine manufacturer. I wouldn't say regulated, but process for what type of fuel is being put into the engines. So 100 low lead fuel is currently being utilized and sold throughout the country. Every single state airport, every airport and essentially every airport in the country that sells fuel. Now, the good part is there's been a long conversation about that type of fuel within the industry for some years now. So there is a shift in the conversation of when this fuel is going to be retired and what type of new fuel that could be introduced for these type of aircraft could be utilized. The FAA actually has a really great website, faa.gov/unleaded, faa.gov/unleaded. And they have a program called the EAGLE program called the Eliminate Aviation Gasoline Lead Emissions Program that dives into the more details of where we are today and how we can get to an unleaded fuel within the aviation system for piston powered aircraft. They do have a 2030 goal to eliminate leaded fuel within the industry. And there are some engine manufacturers and aircraft manufacturers that do allow certain fuels to be utilized within the engines or even vehicle fuels that you get out of the pump here. It's very specific, as you can imagine. It is not as simple as just taking the fuel and exchanging it And there is an introduction of a new fuel called G100 unleaded or UL, G100 UL fuel that's being introduced into the market that would eventually come to this airport once the FAA signs off on it. Again, certain aircrafts and engine manufacturers only allow this certain type of fuel. Heritage Aviation, we had a great meeting with them today. And we continue to have great meetings with them periodically. They are prepped and ready to have this type of fuel here. Again, it's not as simple as just having the fuel introduced into the tanks that store it. It's a highly complex process. The demand also has to be there with the types of aircraft that come in and out. And we continue to look for ways that we can partner to make sure that this is available for those aircraft owners or pilots or entities that require this type of new fuel when the FAA allows. There's also infrastructure needs. It's not as simple as just bringing it in the airport into a plane. You have to have the storage tanks, you have to have the fuel trucks that deliver this type of operation. And very similar to what we've talked about in the past with sustainable aviation fuel or SAF fuel, we're working with Heritage to make sure that it's essentially ready to go. A couple of quick updates coming soon. We have a group of international delegates coming to the airport that will be meeting with the airport team as well as the Transportation Security Administration. This group of people is from all over the world in high-level leadership positions, mostly related to not just airport security, but security overall. So myself and the TSA Federal Security Director are going to be presenting this coming Monday to this delegation. We're talking all over the world, from Australia to Mongolia, countries in Africa, the Middle East that are coming to tour the United States for about a month. And we were selected as one of those places to tour from a small airport perspective, which is going to be really interesting, mutually very interesting to gather information and to share stories. So we're really looking forward to that conversation. From here, they go to Atlanta, they tour that airport. They've done so it's a little different. This is all sponsored by the State Department, or Department of State, and it's hosted by the Vermont League of World Affairs. That's how the connection was made through a collaboration with Homeland Security and us. Next one is Dave, a little background on our inspection.
Sounds good. So Monday we have ours, it takes place for 3 days, Monday through Wednesday next week. It's our annual FAA 139, annual inspection. And it's basically, they go through everything safety related to taking the airports. All the training records for everyone, from all the personnel that have a role at the airports, airfield, maintenance records, maintenance, employee training, things like that, operations training. Everyone that has a ability to drive on the airfield, they do a check of their records as well. They go through the wildlife hazard review stuff to make sure that we're doing everything we should be doing. They actually do a physical inspection on the airport. So I want to say it's a 3-day process. It takes a good portion of those days where it's on the airfield, actually checking the markings, all of the signs, anything safety related that could impact the safety of the aircraft. That's what they're looking for. They do an inspection at night to make sure that the lighting is up to spec, and anything that is out of spec is something that they would put in what's called a correct letter correction. And typically, actually last year we only had one item that was compliance, which is really good inspection. So I'm really confident this year will be very similar to last year. It's very minimal on our corrective items. Pretty much it. A lot of it's a pretty intense thing that we go through every year before running warrants next week, so.
Of course, there's a lot more to it, but yeah.
Yeah. Do they do any of this same checking with the air guard? I mean, they certainly drive on the runways, don't they?
Yeah.
Some other.
Yeah, that's part of it as well, and
So they're part of it as
and
well.
also the fire department, they sent us a certification letter that basically says that they comply with the regulation. So,
Okay.
so we get that certification letter from them, we present that to the inspector. That's pretty much it.
And just to clarify, so Dave and his team are the trainers and essentially the local regulators to make sure that driving and procedures out on the airfield are followed. What the FAA comes and does is make sure that Dave's program and the training, the records with that training, whether it's Air Guard or Heritage or ourselves, it gets completed.
Yep, and I did mention that with the fuel trucks, the fuel tanks they have at Heritage, you go through all that stuff as well. Train records for them, as well as do a physical inspection of fuel trucks and farm. So.
We've had a busy start to the summer. We're in July right now. These are a couple of pictures of the crew. I had a chance of wonderfully spending an overnight shift with the crew, and a lot of back padding because the crew really does an outstanding job of making sure that we're ready. And even though this is an annual inspection set in kind of that time period of July 8th through the 10th, which is next week, we really need to be ready for an inspection at any time. FAA technically can come here anytime, but more importantly, it's for ourselves, it's for our users, our customers, the pilots. We have a very high standard of creating not just a great atmosphere for our customers, but we have just an absolutely amazing team making sure that the airfield also looks the same, from lawn cutting, wildlife, paint, and signage and way beyond. So we like to celebrate that. So this Friday, of course, through the holiday weekend, it's going to be a nice employee and family appreciation night. And we'll take them all to the Lake Monsters game to enjoy an awesome gathering out there with the new I forgot what they're called, but the new awning things out on the first base line. All right.
Beer garden,
What's that?
the beer garden.
Yes. That's the one. No, those nice little yeah, the pavilion things that they serve food and everything. It's pretty beer. No beer. Beer garden is very close. So just a quick update on scheduled seats and passengers, slightly updated this particular chart. You're not gonna notice too much of the difference because we have not seen a difference in that dashed green line. Which is great because our schedule is really hopping over this summer. Just a reminder, that purple quick little line up there, that's our 2008 scheduled seats. So we're surpassing our 2008 schedule for short blip. Mostly through August through October of this year. So we'll continue to monitor, and the number of passengers is looking really well too. So this is again a very similar chart, green dashed line being 85% load factors associated with the scheduled seats. You can see that solid green line is following pretty closely to our forecasted load factors and our forecasted seats. June, we really look at a huge spike. Obviously, the month of June is wrapped up, but we're still gathering all of the final data for passenger numbers that we'll report next month. And hopefully we'll see, I hope, we'll see those numbers surpass the orange line, which is our 2008 number. We won't see that the whole summer, I don't think, based on the schedule. But again, it's looking extremely positive. Over 2008, over 2019, pre-pandemic numbers, it's again looking like a very solid year with a final forecasted prediction of about 710,000 passengers if that line stays consistent. I added a quick slide here too, during our presentation to city council for Project Next, we had a conversation about number of flights coming in and out of the airport. And I just wanted to kind of prove, what I was saying, with data related to number of landings happening at the airport. You can see the light blue line, bar graph line, is showing our 2018 number of landings at the airport, and quantity, number of actual landings. On the right hand axis, that shows you the tally, so 1,800 about in between there. We are lower than that, we have less landings, but again, our forecasted seats are higher. And then you can also see the weight associated with that as well, which is what we previously reported. So even though our landings are less, our weight is generally pretty consistent with what we're seeing for all those other various years, which is great for revenue and great for future revenue as these larger aircraft come into the airport. That is my report for you this month.
We will move on to item 11, which is Commissioner items. Commissioners, anything to bring up during this section? Go ahead, Brent.
I just want to share where Winooski is in terms of finding another commissioner to replace me. We interviewed 3 candidates this past month. One is being moved forward to council for consideration on July 15th. So presuming that person is approved by city council, they will be joining you for the August meeting.
Thank you for that.
And that's not you?
Correct.
Well, look at her smile, you will be missed, you will.
I might be back, we'll see. It is, from my understanding, it's filling in the remainder of the 3-year term, so this will be one year for that appointed person before there's a renewal, so you might see me again.
Thank you, Brent. Commissioners, anything else? We move on to item 12, follow-up items. It wasn't specifically an agenda, but we talked about the fuel usage.
Yes, I got it, and what Nick sent me, and I can share with.
Perfect, yeah. Great.
Concerned.
Commissioners, any other items that came out of this meeting, which we would like staff follow up on? Right. So next up is a proposed executive session. So I have a pair of motions in this regard. So the first motion is that I entertain a motion to move the commission find the premature general public knowledge of information concerning contract negotiations regarding BTV Hotel LLC would clearly place the city at a substantial disadvantage with regard to such negotiations. Your motion to that effect.
So
That's moved by Ellen. Is there a second? Second by Jeff. Any discussion on this point? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Right, Nick, who would you like to participate in this? I'd entertain a motion to move that the commission go into executive session to receive confidential updates on contract negotiations regarding BTP Hotel, and also to adjourn the regular session as no motions are anticipated to be forthcoming after the conclusion of the executive session. That's moved by Jeff. Is there a second? Greg, go ahead.
Just a point of procedure. Have we received information on that? I mean, have we received the Zoom link for that executive session?
Keeping this one?
Yeah.
So we're gonna stay on this one.
Okay, go.
And yeah, we'll kick out town meeting.
Okay, so we're going to stay on this Zoom link here, because oftentimes when we go into executive session, we go to an entirely different link.
Yeah, we're gonna stay on this one. We can see who comes into the meeting prior to them coming, and then we'll just ask town meeting to step out.
Got it, thanks.
Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, you're on, yep.
Sorry, now I'm off. I'm gonna note for the record, I'm gonna not participate on this based on a potential professional conflict of interest. I don't know the nature of the dispute, but some of the players in this project are clients of the firm, so to avoid anything, I'm gonna respectfully recuse myself from that. So I will bow out, and I'm assuming we're not going back. There's no further action items after the executive session. Okay. So I will bow out when you go into executive session. Thank you.
So all those in favor, please. Oh,
Wishing them a happy fourth.
okay.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please signify by saying. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the regular session has been concluded and adjourned, and we now.